So, good evening. Welcome to this Royal Mile Whiskies screening of the Amber Light, a whisky documentary, although more than a whisky documentary, a documentary about Scottish culture and whisky and how they feed off each other. I'll be introducing Adam and Dave very soon. So, Dave Broom, the whisky writer, and Adam Park, the film's director. Hopefully, this slightly complicated setup has all been clear to everyone. Most people should have got a dram pack if they purchase that with a code, and you're hopefully already in Vimeo on another screen. As the slide before suggested, if you could cue that up to 13 seconds, the words on the screen should be "The story of whiskey may seem a familiar one." In a moment, I'll introduce Adam and Dave, and they'll do a big countdown into the film so we can all press play at the same time, and their discussion will carry on this feed on YouTube and Facebook. So a little bit of housekeeping just to let you guys know. The dramming order, if you want to lay out your glasses in the right order, it's not maybe what you would expect, much like the film. We're going to start with Kilchoman Mackay Bay, then over to Compass Box with Great King Street Artist Blend, then up to Speyside with Glenlivet Founders Reserve, Kingsbarns from the Lowlands, and then back to Compass Box, but Glasgow this time with the Great King Street Glasgow Blend. Now, Dave is saying he's going to fancy a highball by that point. If you happen to have some ginger beer or soda or ginger ale in the fridge, you can run and get that at the appropriate time. And as we go through the film, Dave will say, right, we're on to this dram. So he'll keep you right in terms of the drams. Thank you to all the whiskey producers who helped support this show, which has enabled Royal Mile Whiskies to make a charitable contribution for every pack sold to the Drinks Trust, which supports the licensed trade. Always has done, but in recent months, their work has been drawn more sharply into focus, as obviously the bar and restaurant trade has had a very tough time. My memory of this film is there's lots of lovely shots of some great Scottish pub establishments, which is going to make us all thirsty for a dram, and we should support these guys when we can, hopefully soon. So thank you to the suppliers again, and for the Drinks Trust for the work they do. Comments. So if you make a comment on Facebook or YouTube, we can see that, and we'll pull comments up as we go. There will be time for a Q&A at the end, because it'll be quite busy, I think, as we go along. So answering long questions will be tough for Adam and Dave. So we'll leave a little bit of time after the credits to have some more extensive questions and answers. But I think that's all from me. We want to get cracking with the film soon, so let's bring in Adam and Dave. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Very well indeed, Arthur. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good. I don't think there's any more need to hear from me. I'm going to duck out at this point and enjoy the film. I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. A world's first.
I think we're technological innovators here.
Or mad. Yeah.
Ahead of the curve a little bit. But thank you, everybody, for joining. We've asked you to cue it to 13 seconds in just because there can be sort of buffering issues for various people. So we'll give you a few moments to make sure you're at the 13-second point. And Dave, do you just want to a quick overview of the drams we'll be having this evening?
Yeah, very quickly, Arthur's just outlined them, but a personal thank you to all the suppliers for not just supporting it tonight, but the efforts and support for the whole whiskey industry for the film. It was quite amazing. We're going to do it in slightly unorthodox fashion because we're going to go by the film, and the first main location we go to is Islay. So contradicting normal practice, we're going to kick off with the Kilchoman. So make sure you've got a glass of water after that to freshen your palate. So yeah, the Kilchoman Mackay Bay. Then we're going to go over into an urban setting, in fact, over to Edinburgh with Ian Rankin. So we're going to have a look at Great King Street, the great blend from the artist blend, that is, from Compass Box. Then up to Speyside with Alan Winchester and Sarah Burgess. And because it's Alan, we've gone for Glenlivet, their Founders Reserve. So again, relatively light dram. Then down to 5, and thank you to Kings Barnes, their Dream to Dram, which a great dram from a new distillery. And then finally, again, back to an urban setting for the farewell, and that's going to be the Great King Street Glasgow blend, because I'm from Glasgow and I just wanted to have that at the end. And as Arthur said, I'm going to be having a highball by then, because I'm tired of talking and I need to refresh myself. So I'm going to be making a highball. If you want to join me, if not, I really don't mind. So anyway, yeah, there we go. That's the drams.
Excellent. So I'll give a little countdown to make sure everyone's hit the right spot, and we'll get started. So counting down from 5, 4.
We are a little bit ahead of time. We did advertise that we were going to start.
Oh, well, we can keep chatting for a little bit then.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just nervous. I'm the kind of person who would be shoveling down my tea, trying to get everything done in time for.
I think the same thing happened for our premiere at the Edinburgh Film Festival. I think there was some different times going around to. I mean, God knows how that happened, but there was some different times going around. So some people shuffled in 15 minutes after the start, so it would be true to form for us to start really.
It's funny. I've done screenings kind of all around the place, and the reaction's been really interesting depending on where you are. It's always intriguing to see at what points people laugh, and there's certain points where there's always going to be a laugh. And in Australia, I did one in Melbourne, and it was a very Melbourne audience, and everybody was laughing all the time, and there was lots of kind of shouts and hurling abuse and Melbourneian about the whole thing. And then the night after, we screened it in Christchurch in New Zealand, and everybody was crying because there were so many expat Scots. They were going, "Oh, it's my home, I miss Scotland." You know? So there you go. So God knows what's going to happen tonight. Tears and cheers.
Always to get some sort of response: tears, laughter. You know, that's the important thing.
Maybe we've got 3 minutes. We were chatting earlier on, Dave, that I had something I needed to apologise for.
Yes. So indeed you did. Something which could have made the film. I think it
could have made the film. I'd like to think I helped a little bit with the film. With
you
hooking
did.
You up with Jim and Linda, hooking you guys up with Jim and Linda, that you see as a wonderful backdrop of their incredible collection during the film. I didn't hinder the film, I hope, anyway.
No, it did not.
But it was only in preparation for this, but my wife, asking what was going on, I said, Amber Light, some film about Scottish culture and whiskey. She said, "Oh, did you show him the Edwin poem?" And I was like, "Oh, I really should have done that." And I'd forgotten about this thing in existence. So my wife, Adam, you may not have heard of Edwin Morgan, but I'm sure, Dave, you have. Edwin Morgan was Scotland's, poet laureate would be the term we'd use down south, but the Macca. And he's a much loved Scottish poet who's taught a lot in schools, and a wonderful man. And when he was getting a little old, so we knew him in his last days in his flat and then in a care home, but he was still bright as a button and writing poetry. And my wife would take him off for drives to get out and about and out of Glasgow because he couldn't travel on his own. And they struck up this lovely relationship. My wife asked him if he'd ever written a poem about whiskey, which he had not, even though he took a dram of Glenmorangie many evenings, I think. But it was unfussy love of whiskey. He found his whiskey that he loved. That was that. But she basically asked him repeatedly to write a poem about whiskey, which he did on the back of the care home menu. And so, for one of Scotland's greatest poets of recent times, I probably should have mentioned that I had in possession an unpublished poem, which was the only one that he'd ever written
Morgan,
about.
Unpublished poem on whiskey in a whiskey film. Yeah.
He even mentioned it in passing, just out of.
Would you like me to read it to you?
Love to.
Okay, it would admittedly sound much better in a Scottish accent, but the poem is called Amber Bright.
Was our alternative name?
No, that is the name of the poem. So the poem went like this. A spirit hovered long ago over a landscape of pines and snow. They blow on their hands down there, it's cold, getting their sheep into the fold. The spirit whispered, Glen this, Glen that, purest waters sparkling, not flat. Magic mash of sharp spiked barley, distilled, distill, ever so rarely. Now cockles of the heart unfold, sluicing those nips of northern gold, with warmth for any winter's night. Swirl the tumbler, amber bright. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
Well,
that's really lovely.
yeah. What can I say, Arthur? You know,
It's about a year late. But Amber Light Part 2.
A wonderful addition to this evening's event, though. So
Okay.
it's, yeah.
We could put it in a DVD extra. You know.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thanks, Sasha, for browbeating the great Edwin Morgan into writing a poem.
So is that's unpublished and just sort of written on a what did anything happen with that poem, or was it just a gift? Or?
No, after he died, there was some discussion that it was going to go into a book of unpublished works, but as I remember it, nothing happened. So not many people have heard it read out loud or even read it at all. Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna retreat in shame.
Now you know why you were cut out, Arthur.
He's completely forgiven for his other great contributions to the entire project. So I guess without further ado, let's get started with the film. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully by now you're all at 13 seconds in, and we'll get started on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and play.
Working.
Yeah. I had a look over this earlier, and I think I thought it'd be nice just to talk about the film that we spoke about initially when we were talking about making the film, which was Searching for the Wrong-Eyed Jesus by the great Jim White.
Yes. Yeah. It's still on iPlayer, actually. Yeah,
it is a great arena film. Yeah. A similar. No, I'm not even going to say similar. It was a sort of spark of inspiration that Dave and I both loved this film and just thought that it would be great to do something similar, but in Scotland and bringing in whiskey. So here's a sequence gleaned from hours spent at the amazing moving image archive of the National Library of Scotland, which is obviously would contain a fair amount of whiskey footage. Which distillery is this from?
That's Tormore Distillery up there in Speyside. This kind of fantastical, vaguely modernist. I also think it looks like an East German health spa.
But it's made to look lovely by the footage. Yeah,
it's gorgeous. Yeah. And actually, it's this. For those of you who haven't watched the film, we're just going to talk all the way through it. But this 1 minute is all we talk about in terms of production. That we were very clear from the outset that we didn't want to make another rather lovely whiskey film with slow motion shots of barley and just talk about how it's made, because I also, as soon as you begin talking about one distillery, you got to talk about all of them to some extent. And this was always going to be looking in a more oblique way about whiskey's relationship to Scotland and Scotland's relationship to whiskey. So the production thing was incidental, to be honest, in terms of the film itself. Obviously, it's important in all manner of ways.
I think the whiskey is boiled beer thing, right, seemed to resonate with audiences quite a lot. I don't know if that's a sort of familiar way of boiling it down for people.
It's I do get I do see it on occasion at tastings and stuff, and I sometimes get a bit pushback, shall we say, You know, it's far more complicated than that. So, well, yeah, it is, and it isn't. You know,
How
that's
dare
just my
you?
heretical nature. You know? But you know, the whole kickoff of the film really is in Glasgow. So it's kind of this. You know, it's horrible watching yourself on film and horrible listening to yourself. But Adam deemed it very necessary, and he was quite right, that you kind of need to know who the narrator is. So there's a little kind of snippet about me growing up in Glasgow and Partick, and that's down the hill to my granny's flat down there, down in tenements.
And these great animations by Ian Gardner, which we're about to see, which really, I think, one of the things that really elevates the film, and wonderful sound design by Owen Pratt here and through the film, which we'll talk about. And I think just Ian's terrific. I think I was happier with the process than he might have been, but he was great to work with, and just I think it's just a wonderful feel. These sequences really.
And true as well. You know, this is my memory really of it. You know, of the family gathering round, and you know, my dad having his one dram, and the parties and Kayleys that went on in the house, and
I have at various
Ivor cutlery.
Exactly. At various screenings in America and whatnot, I have been asked who Ivor Cutler is, and it's. Well,
that's a good thing, Adam, because now they're going out and seek out the work of the great man.
Amongst many other people.
But it was really my first awareness of what whiskey was. That, you know, one of my uncles was in the whiskey trade, but you know, all the men drank whiskey. And it was just this kind of drink that was always around. It wasn't drunk in any great capacity, but it was
there's the great story of you learning to drink whiskey in at your mid-morning break at your shift at the bottling plant, which is we didn't get to include in the film, which would have been an amazing animation, because we could have done more of the industrial kind of area or whatever. But here's that great little street in Glasgow. If anyone's got a few hours afternoon to kill, there's a wonderful labyrinth and old secondhand bookshop next to a record shop, next to a wonderful little tea house. So, and here's the Calmac.
Calmac, fortified by Calmac and cheese, obviously. But yeah, kicking off an Islay, because you know, this is a kind of history of whiskey, but just in a slightly different way to normal. So I really wanted to start off an Islay because, well, a whole host of reasons. And we're going to kick off. It's a very good shot to start off with. We're going to start off with Kilhoman. So we're right up there on the west coast now. The one shot, slow motion shot of barley.
Maybe repeat it once or twice. But
we're going to kick off with Kilhoman for reasons that shall become apparent. We could have genuinely just made a film about Islay, couldn't we, Adam?
Yeah. James Brown, the farmer here, sadly, we only included him in a couple of shots, but we spent a good day with him. He's got this amazing spring water, spring on his farm, and the toothache stone, the folkloric remedy to a sore tooth.
And of course, you know, you have to have the movie star of the island.
Star of Parks and Recreation, if anybody's seen that, and amongst other things. He's not a drinker, is he?
He's not a drinker at all, no. But you know, his answer, of what would they have drunk? Anything they could get is pretty true. And hello to everyone in Islay who's watching. I know there's a couple.
Some
but
of it
definitely
potentially pilfered from one warehouse or another.
I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Hidden in a piano, or abseiling through the roof, or all sorts of ways of.
I love the sound here.
Yeah. Owen had the idea to plunge one of his microphones deep into the peat, so the sound of the cutting is the contact mic, getting that really bassy sound. It's amazing.
It's great. Yeah, been working with Pinky for a long time. I remember going out cutting peat with him with a whole bunch of Polish people, and there was two girls from the PR department who were both wearing stilettos. I think there's some shoes still left in the peat moss.
Just aerating the peat. That's great. Danuvig? I mean, you could spend the entire film just looking at the history of Islay and its relevance to, in that region, with barely even mention whiskey.
This is a really interesting sequence because it does have a talking dog in it. As Georgie and Neil talking about Islay history, and I think this is something to kind of point out. Talking dog, Jock. It's important. I think it was excellent that, although we talked to people from various different companies and different distilleries, they never really talked about their own brand. They were talking always in very general terms about Islay or about Speyside, about whiskey in general, about history, etc. And I think that kind of maybe pushed the film in a slightly different direction as well, because it is about community. It is about not just selling a brand; it's about selling an idea of Scotland. And it's very much alive. And it's another reason for doing it on Islay, because the sense of community there, because, it is by nature insular, in the proper sense of the word. Everybody's helping each other out. Everybody's concerned about each other.
And here's Kilchoman.
Yeah, so Kilchoman graveyard, and that's lovely Claire Mackay, who was pregnant at the time, actually, and still drinking. Now he's a herbal historian. And this is the grave of the Beaton clan. And the Beatons, it is believed, are the first people to bring distillation across into Scotland. They were hereditary physicians, very, very learned people. And Claire just has some extraordinary facts and figures about the Beatons. There's finally some research going on into the Gaelic medical texts, about 600 years too late, but really to show the wealth and the riches of knowledge in terms of medicine that was going on. And distillation was a fundamental part of it. And it all started, quite conceivably, at Kilchoman. So, there's a good reason for having a wee dram of it.
Which Kilchoman is this? Macra Bay, yeah. So Macra Bay is just a beautiful, beautiful beach just down the way from there. It's a really stunning spot. So the Beatons would have got distillation from a Arabic translated into Gaelic by a alchemist in
Toledo,
in the king of Italian, in the court of an Italian king.
Yeah. So
but Irish brought to
yes,
Scotland.
Yeah. Well, so, it's easier to get to Ireland than it is to get into the mainland of Scotland. It was,
you can see it from there, can't you?
It was different sets of boundaries in those days.
Yeah, it was all one country, all one people before it was two different people. It's a Highland cow.
Or barley. I love that story. Kind of, I found it in an old collection of stories, sort of folk tales of Islay, the west coast of Scotland, and just this idea that, I mean, the whole scallop shell thing is interesting because that was what people were drinking out of, which perhaps gave way to quakes further down the line. But a couple of things there. One, it was women that were doing it. It was more widespread. It wasn't just monks that were doing it, and also initially it was a medicine. It wasn't necessarily a social drink. It was a medicine, and it was flavoured. And whiskey was flavoured all the way up until the 19th century. So we decided to go ahead and try and do one, do our own quasi-legal Ushkaba on Islay with Claire and James in the Lookout Tower.
James who works for Blue Brook Laddie, but forages for all the botanicals in your bottle of The Botanist.
Yes, yeah, indeed, and we did. I mean, there will be some geeks watching. It was grain neutral that we used, so thanks to Brook Laddie. I think they knew we had it, and the still was Claire. The still was Claire's, which she uses to make non-alcoholic tinctures. We just made up a recipe and crossed the fingers. Basically.
In a tower that was built to fend off attacking pirates that have sailed over from the coast of North America. Yeah, it's a long way to go for a load of nothing. Yeah,
hey.
They were fended off they got nothing because they were fended off by the sharpshooters on the tower rather than knocking it.
It was incredibly smoky in there, and slightly. I mean, it'd be nice. You're thinking, it's good to show it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. At least we've shown the principles of it. I think the most remarkable thing was it actually did work, and it tasted rather delicious. We did pour it out. We did share it with a whole bunch of people, which you'll see in a wee minute or two. And it was only once I got it home I actually tested its strength, and it was like 70%. Yeah, it was pura strong, as you'd say in Campbellton. But it really kind of took you back into, maybe like sitting on earth floors, still smoke, distilling. There was something quite magical about it. I'd done Uskabas before, but only using rotovaps, which clearly they didn't really have in the 16th century. And it was a magical way to start off, and really to try and embed whiskey in a different way. To the way, they started making whiskey and therefore they were making single malt. No, they weren't. They were doing this stuff,
There's also a good way of giving it a sense, like all these illicit distillers in the smuggling area. You have to hang around for quite a while to start getting it. It's not like you light a fire and plonk it on and suddenly you turn on the tap and you're getting, it took us, it was good chunk of time over 2 days to get what we did, a liter, and while you're trying to dodge the old bill or the white coats or whoever it would have been, got to know what you're doing and be patient. Neil, it's just brilliant here. And we did get the most beautiful weather every day we were on island. I think it might have rained once, but over the course of the film, including pre-production, I think we must have spent about 15, 16 days there. And I think we only got one non-sunny, and it was belting down for a day. But it's pretty rough when we went back for a screening. The very, very sweet Georgian Al put Dave and I up in their camper van after we decided driving home after dinner was a bad idea, and it's pretty rough weather.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Georgia had to make a cake as ever the day after. So the first runnings of it, and it worked well. and it was important, and you know what Neil had just been saying there. He really he brought that in, that really important element in, that you know, whiskey was already then part and parcel of the culture. You know, people would sit around, they wouldn't necessarily get hammered, they would sit around, whiskey would be there, songs would be there, you know, people would be telling tales, and whiskey was just part and parcel of the community. And that is one of the themes and the threads that just kind of run all the way, hopefully not too obvious, not too overstated away, just kind of run all the way through the film. So yeah, and again, unprompted, so it was great that Neil came in with that.
Here's the first of our amazing musical contributors, Rachel Newton, who's you know, plays in a number of bands and plays solo and sings Gaelic and sings English, and she's just a wonderful musician. It was very sweet of her to come out to Ireland and play for us there at Finlagan.
Yeah. Again, a kind of magical moment. You know, they're eating Isla scallops. And you know, I just asked Rachel for this song. You know, please choose a song. She sang a song about smuggling whiskey from Ireland across to the mainland, and she's just so wonderfully open and very, very giving. A very, very giving person. And
she's actually here in Candyman's in Edinburgh. Is it Candyman's in?
No, that was Sandy Bells.
Oh, Sandy Bell, sorry.
Listen to it.
Great storied Edinburgh pub. So Martin was an English traveller, and he
no, Scots.
He
was a Gael. He wrote the first accurate account of life in the islands.
And here's a little excerpt of one of his books that Dave references. Coloured with what?
Creeping thistle tincture. Yeah. Yeah, so it's I do kind of love this this extract from Martin. That the more you kind of study, you know, he has got some fairly tall tales. Apparently, the cure for the common cold in Jura was to place somebody's head on an anvil and bring a hammer very close to their head, and out of sheer terror, the cold would leave them. I don't know if it would work for Corona, but this was its shot. But you know, Michael Menegos, how are you? So having kind of established the basis of whiskey, its medicinal properties, its original creation, its importance to community. We kind of move back and pick up the personal story about me first getting involved in whiskey. And then moving on to have a look in Glasgow and then Edinburgh about the social aspects of whiskey.
This is an approximation of the great Lauriston pub in Galway, in Glasgow. Sorry,
in Galway.
if any of you spent time in Glasgow or indeed in Glasgow, the Lauriston is a pub to visit. The tables are clamped to the floor and the ashtrays are clamped to the tables, and it's just wonderful. It's just amazing pub. And here's another amazing pub we're about to arrive at with an amazing barman.
If you look very closely, I give money to James Yorkston, who's sitting on the street there.
And his trademark hat.
And Big Frank.
You can instantly tell the people who walk into that pub who have traveled to get there. It's like, well, I have arrived, and the excitement is palpable. It's amazing.
In the days of travel and of cheap travel, Frank would have regulars from Gothenburg, because it was actually cheaper to fly to Glasgow for the weekend to go and drink in the pot still than drink in a whiskey bar in Sweden.
Oh, of course,
but community. That's what it's about. It's about whiskey's a democratic drink. It's not a drink for the elite. It's been sold too much as a drink for the elite these days. And it's not, because you walk into the pot still, you could be standing next to a High Court judge and a bricklayer, and everybody's just there. Boom, everybody's at the same level. Everybody's just drinking whiskey and enjoying each other's company. That's what it's about. That's what whiskey's about.
There's a great half and half, which is a wonderful way to drink your booze.
And it is funny to think of it, whiskey, in that way, that this kind of really humble democratic drink has taken over the world, or has not taken over the world, but it has such extraordinary global reach. It still amazes me, really. But the other strand that we wanted to bring, you've seen Rachel already, is bringing in musicians, and just having this parallel about thinking about creativity, about thinking about songwriting, and also thinking about continuity and innovation. That, especially speaking about it with somebody like Ali Roberts, who looks forward in terms of the folk tradition, that's very deeply embedded in the folk tradition, and the way in which she takes a ballad and then moves the ballad forward and interprets it in different ways, depending on what your situation is, because the ballad will speak to you in a different way in the 21st century than it would in the 18th century. And whiskey has changed as well. And again, it's not like kind of hammering this point. It's just, it was fascinating to see people just talking about the same thing in their own field and really seeing what the connections are. And he had to sing Firewater because it's got this amazing, it's a great song. It's got this amazing line, library of ethers, and that's whiskey for me.
Yeah. I mean, there is the thing where I don't know if it's sort of designed like that, but he'll have a sort of, like he's talking about now, it's sort of the balance between sort of reimagining old songs and doing his original stuff, but you'll find sort of synthesizers popping up in really old tunes that he's picked up on, like and really sort of doing them in interesting ways. And I think he sits really comfortably, not just in the kind of folk scene, but amongst, all sorts of different kind of musical directions that people are into. So it's just a wonderful guy.
It's really important. It's that blurring of boundaries, you know, you know, I used to write about jazz, and one reason I kind of stopped writing about jazz is because you had this really rigid thing where you're only allowed to write about some form of jazz, you know, and you weren't allowed to write about anything else. And whiskey was getting a bit like that as well, you know. It's just whiskey. You can only talk about that. No, it's you know, it's a drink that ripples out across society. It's a cultural product.
Yeah.
You know?
Actually,
very quickly, sorry, Doug. No, we're coming on to the second dram in a second. I will tell you all.
I mean, this film is awful for the nostalgia of visiting pubs. I've got to apologize to the audiences if you're yearning to visit your favorite pub. It'll happen someday. So, Dave, have you always been fairly sort of agnostic as to how to serve your dram? You know, have you always been, you know, try it with different things, you know, break boundaries, or was there a time where you were
probably that's probably more recent to be perfectly honest. I mean, you know, my dad drank whiskey with water, you know, so when I began drinking whiskey, I drank it with water. My Uncle Tom had it with lemonade, so you know that was another way of doing it. You know, certainly when I was growing up, nobody drank whiskey neat. So I would always, you know, I was brought up always adding something to it. I think really the whole kind of cocktail and then mixing thing really came from Japan. To be honest with you, when I began to go into Japan or the States and began to do bourbon, Manhattans, etc., etc. But in terms of highballs, it was probably Japan that really kind of made me go, wow, you know, this is an amazing drink. Because it changes.
And coconut water and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Green tea.
And this is kind of my epiphany. Well, we asked everybody what their whiskey epiphany was. And it actually got slightly embarrassing because pretty much everybody said it was Talisker.
Seems to have that.
But yeah, it was that moment where place and occasion and drink just kind of went like that for me, and it was I want to know more. And so we move on to our second dram, folks. As we enter the Cafe Royal with Ian Rankin, we move on to Great King Street, which is just down the road.
So what's the you know, give us a bit of a talk through this blend.
So Great King Street from the great guys at Compass Box, who've always done blended. You know, they are great innovators, but you know they are essentially a 19th century blending house doing fantastic innovative things. And this is just this was their, and still is their blend. They're I hate to use the word standard blend for it's exceptional. And made in the Edinburgh style. The Edinburgh style was slightly lighter than the Glasgow style, for geographical reasons, and also because people in Edinburgh just don't like flavour. No, that's not true. And it's really delicate. It's sweet. It's got lots of American oak coming through in it. Lots of fresh fruits. Just great. Awesome. This. It is a complicated place.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's what's so wonderful about it, because whiskey is a complicated thing as well, you know.
And here's the great Alistair Gray.
He's a great man.
Just excuse me while I duck away for one moment. Sorry.
It was you know, it was an absolute treat to interview Alistair, who sadly died just at the beginning of the year. He was just and he was the very first person. I think when we sat down thinking about, like, who do we want from the non-whiskey world, from the creative world, Alistair was top, because without Alistair Gray, I think the new Scottish Renaissance in terms of writing, you know, literature, poetry, drama, art, you know, whatever, he was the catalyst. You know, he was the guy that just said, we can do it, and we can make it Scottish. You know, that you don't have to look to London. You don't have to follow that convention. We can do it here at home and make it ourselves. You know, you've quite rightly, I think Adam said, you know, that he's like William Blake. An extraordinary man, and
Yeah, it's hard not to. And just you know, obviously, I wasn't huge. I think I was familiar with his name before it started working on the film, but it's hard not to just be in awe of him. I mean, if you're in Glasgow, go to the Oran Moor, sneak your way upstairs and see the. I mean, you know, he basically did a mural the size of a decent sized church, all over the ceiling, all over the walls, and it's just incredible.
So this particular bit the film is really beginning to bring the cultural side more into focus, more sharply forward, in terms of so it's like Ian talking about, you know, Scottish literature, how Scottish literature reflects Scottish personality. You know, whether we do have this dark side to it. Alistair Gray also talking about this disparate nature of Scotland, all these different countries kind of jammed together, and which is a very kind of whiskey thing as well. You know, all the different styles, all the different approaches that people take. That somehow whiskey, which is a tricksy drink, you know, it's not a straightforward drink, somehow reflects that aspect of the Scottish personality. I think, you know, nothing is straightforward in Scotland. We like to talk our way around problems. Ireland's very similar, you know, that kind of discursive way. That kind of, we prefer the long way around than the direct route, shall we say? Yeah.
Unless it's the train from Glasgow to Edinburgh, that's pretty easy. Aha! And here's on the Royal Mile.
Yeah, because. And the reason for going to see Robert Ferguson, this is Robert Ferguson, kind of forgotten Scottish poet of the 18th century, a great influence on Burns. Whiskey had really only appeared in Gaelic song up until that point. And so Ferguson was really the first person to really start writing about whiskey. And the reason that people weren't writing about whiskey in Scots or in English was that it wasn't really part and parcel of life. And certainly not the life of the bourgeoisie who were writing the books. And then towards the tail end of the 18th century, you begin to see, you know, the Scottish Enlightenment, and also this kind of generalized interest in things Scottish, and a greater kind of sense of national pride. And we make this stuff, you know, we don't just have to drink rum, or we don't have to drink cognac. We actually make this good stuff. So here's a poem.
A Jill is a quarter pint, you said, or
yeah. Choose that line. Yeah. Of course you would.
Ian was another guy. Just everybody in the film was just incredibly patient and generous with their time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ian was really great and really liked the film. But
yeah, I'm extremely relieved about that point. But you know, he again, unprompted, just managed to open up that discussion, sort of say, this is why whiskey is important to Scotland, because we have a national drink, and it's a drink that reflects our kind of weird psyche. And in this part, this is important, a really important bit for me, and obviously for you as well, is that all the whiskey films are all kind of wonderfully romantic, and they're very beautiful, and they're good, and I enjoy them. So I'm not criticizing them in any way, but they don't talk about the dark side of whiskey. You know, they don't talk about alcoholism and the fact that it has been something which is abused, you know, has been abused over the years, rather than just enjoyed. So really wanted to get that darker side of whiskey in there.
For me, I think I just, you know, as not coming from the sort of geekery side, which I'm fully on board with. Don't worry, I'm, you know, geeky about plenty of things, but I couldn't imagine making a film about whiskey without talking, you know, about its destructive side. You know, something that potent and powerful can't help but be.
Yeah, so we asked the Furrow Collective, who are this amazing folk supergroup that you've subsequently done a lot of work with now, actually, Adam, to do
we did a music video
temperance song.
Yeah. I mean, they're just great live. I think that's the thing about folk music. You know, recordings are great, but you know, seeing them perform, all these musicians, not just the Furrow Collective, but you know, folk musicians in general, I think just live is something else. You know, more than you know, we listen to all sorts of music. You know, and, but I think folk music, particularly live, has a unique effect.
Yeah, it's more that kind of visceral effect, really. And yeah, I mean, the great thing about the last Furrow album, Furrow's album, was actually quite relatively cheery for them. Their albums are blood-soaked.
Not every song is about infanticide or patricide.
They're torrents of blood.
I mistook you for a swan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I like. And Emily,
that harmony is awesome. And this was, early in the morning in Bennett's Bar. And this bit was really fascinating. This is Ali, who just kind of came out completely unprompted, again, really talking about the parallels between writing a song and making whiskey, and about kind of pulling disparate parts together to make a coherent whole. And it was just, you know, I could have hugged him at that point. I was just kind of sitting there going, yeah, beauty, we have a film. You know, because, you know, you must feel it even more than I did, because, you know, that is this going to work? You know, because
it's a very strange something I wasn't hugely used to, is having someone else do the interviews. So I was able to concentrate even more on what the interviewees were saying. And when, you know, you just know there's like 6 seconds, it was like 5 or 6 seconds, and he's just like, perfect. Yeah. There's a moment with James Yorkston later as well, where it's just like, yeah, great. This might come together. And in a 90-minute film that makes some sense to some people.
I think. I also think the important thing about that song is it does actually have a happy ending. He does give up the drink, which is not something we're suggesting you're doing tonight. But obviously, we have 5 drams. You can take your time. I know Doug is horsing his way through them at the moment, but we'll get onto the Glenlivet in a minute. And
this
Annabelle,
is actually from the archive.
This
is actually from the archive. This is the actual first recorded text of mention of Ishkaba from it. That's a Beaton's document, which is quite cool. We went into John Damien because he features in Dante's Inferno, which is what Aleister Gray was finishing his sort of. I don't think it's an adaptation, but it's his kind of retelling of. Yeah. We went into him quite extensively with Aleister Gray. It's fascinating, but one of the many amazing things that didn't make it into the final cut. So here's Lindor's Abbey, which is kind of the point at which this distilled spirit kind of started to become something more like the whiskey we might be familiar with today.
Maybe. It kind of moves in 3 directions. I think the history, whiskey kind of evolves in 3 different patterns. It's this flavored stuff, and it's flavored stuff which becomes out of drink of the people. It's alchemy, and it's then it's kind of scientific research going on at the same time. So it's kind of 3 very, very separate different uses. So it's not really as simple as, it was made by monks and they were making whiskey. It was, philosophical investigations and medicine and everything slowly beginning to kind of coalesce and create this thing that we call whiskey. But you've really got to wait until the 17th, 18th century before something that we would understand as proto-whiskey, essentially.
So the aging / therefore coloring thing. Well, the coloring thing came because rum was fashionable, and sorry, the aging coloring thing was because rum was really fashionable, and whiskey sort of wanted to match that. Is that right?
Sort of. I think I don't want to make this about rum, really, but rum was the gold standard in terms of spirit production in the 18th century. Whiskey learned from rum. Rum didn't learn from whiskey. So in terms of maturation, rum had it first. Cognac had it first. But yeah, whiskey was for the late to the party, to be perfectly honest. And we don't like to hear that, Scots. We want to be first. But we were late. We were late on. So we've poured our next dram, folks, which is Glenlivet Founders Reserve, because we're in Glenlivet. We're in the Braes of Glenlivet with the great Alan Winchester. And that's Alan and I wandering around in the Braes, heading out from Breval Distillery down to the Priory at Scallon, or the seminary, which was there at Scallon. There was quite a lot of Catholic chapels and hidden chapels in this seminary in that part, hidden because of Reformation, obviously. And once again, this is, it's Alan. You have to have Alan in it because he's a distiller, he knows whiskey inside out, but by God, he's a great historian and a social historian, and really understands not just flavour, but the people and the history of Speyside. Just a perfect companion.
It says he's retired, but it seems that he's...
Nobody retired.
Whiskey people retiring seems to be sort of traveling around the world and meeting people and representing your distillery. I mean, I think
we are not retiring people.
That would beg the question: what you do when you're working.
Yeah.
But
But I mean, you look at this, because at this point we're kind of talking about smuggling and all of that. And you look at that landscape and you think, well, Speyside's all soft and gentle. And it's not. There's Ben Rinnes and there's the Braes, and it's tough land. It's a tough land to farm. And,
how high is Ben Rinnes?
just under 3,000 feet. And we walked up very quickly.
Yeah, it's a good idea to carry a drone up there.
It was, yeah. Especially a drone without any batteries in it. Yeah.
Well, hold on a sec. Trade secrets, Mr. Broom. But the very act of dragging a drone up a mountain when the drone can just get up there is a realization that tends to dawn on you once you get up to the mountain. But yeah. Anyway, here is Lord Bruce.
Lord Elgin.
Lord Elgin, sorry. And he's sort of steeped in whiskey. His all sorts of family.
I'd phrase it slightly
phrase that differently. His family's sort of every angle of his family is sort of involved, and he was one of the founders of the Keepers of the Quaig. And
hello, Annabelle. He was asked to become part of the Keepers of the Quaig, which is this organisation. If you've done a wee bit of work for whiskey, you're elevated to this lofty status of a Keeper of the Quaig. And they came to Lord Elgin, and he had to look at the proposal. And he said, "It's not really fun enough. It has to be more fun," and helped to create all the wonderful pageantry that goes around. What an absolutely gorgeous man! Very, very amusing day I spent with him. But it was important to get him in there because it was you're beginning to kind of move into smuggling. So we were looking at the producers, the peasant farmers, if you want, and then the landlords as well, of which they were, and that interaction between the two, and this idea that whiskey was slowly beginning to become more respectable. Yeah.
The great botanical gardens.
And it's really interesting kind of going into that Founders Reserve there, the sweetness there, that vanilla character. I just picked it up on the soundtrack. That's there, and it's hot gorse or it's coconut, and it takes you into a place. Whiskey takes you into your memories, and it takes you to a place, and that is what is so. That's another link that you have with landscape, and another link you have with Scotland itself. There are places that you kind of go, yes, that is a manifestation of place. Yeah.
Grand Wizard. There you go, Dave. Georgie feels it too.
Yeah, I balk at the term Grand Wizard, really, Georgie.
It's not
got great connotations, but thank you.
That's
the phrase I used. It started getting Gandalf-y in New Zealand, and I've kept it.
I heard someone was referencing Alan Moore earlier as well, which is
wow.
So this for me really, I love this aspect of sort of re-engaging with landscape and the environment around us, and Robert McFarlane's mentioned there, and Nan Shepherd, and I think we've spoken about this quite a lot. And it's kind of people re-engaging with the environment around them. I think is at least I have, but I think everybody has, because of climate and because of I mean, who knows what sort of ripples that COVID is gonna affect upon us. But it's just wonderful, this bit. I think it really. I mean, scenes of people reading. I mean, you know, if you describe it before you've seen the film, you'd think, okay, so you're just going to have a scene where someone's reading a passage from your book, and then, okay, you know, say that to your film school lecturer or whatever, and they'll look at you sideways. But I think it's just, you know, it just helps you kind of sink into it.
It does, yeah, and I mean, it's just one of my favorite passages of that amazing book. You know, The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd. That it's about awareness. It's about opening your mind and being in that moment and just appreciating that. And what Alan's saying at that point, which is, you know, everybody thinks it's gloomy and it's not. It's alive and whiskey is about that engagement. You know, that physical act of taking a whiskey in your mouth. That is the one moment that you're going to be drinking that whiskey. You're never going to get that effect ever again, and you have to be in that moment. And the flavors that come out are flavors that remind you of place. So you have to talk about it.
Here's Sarah, really for me, sort of really represents that counterbalance to the to Alistair Gray, or Alistair Gray and Alistair Roberts, really coming from the typical creativity side. She comes from the creativity and whiskey side, and really establishes those parallels. Because what she does is amazing, and
she's an extraordinary person.
That kind of, I mean, it is blending, isn't it? It's sort of cast from one distillery, but you're, it's amazing, yeah. Yeah, I think this is another great. The bit with Alan Winchester and here, and I think later with Stephen. I think Dan Dennison, the DP, for most of the film, did a terrific job. Really did some great work here. Slightly rushed, but you know.
No, it's beautiful. It's an interesting point that she makes here. You know, boom. There you go. It's something that we stopped talking about in whiskey. We were so hung up with tasting notes and talking about production. And there you have the whiskey maker at Macallan sort of saying, what I'm doing is creative and stories. And that then links back to
and she's
women making whiskey and the parallels with all creative activities. You know, it's.
And she makes incredible sense, and it's so sort of, you know, there's nothing wishy-washy about it, you know.
No, there's nothing wishy-washy about Sarah.
It's Gordon and MacPhail, who very kindly let us into their. That's sort of Fort Knox, basically, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, the most amazing repository of ancient casks anywhere. So at this point, we've kind of gone into that kind of creative area, and now we're kind of more into this kind of hardcore historical bit. And I know that we both kind of were trying to work out this part of the story had to be told, and it was easy to get into this part of the story, you know, post smuggling into the greater popularity of whiskey, middle class respectability, etc.
Fashionability,
and the challenge for both of us, and especially for you, was how do we get out of it? You know, how do we stop this becoming a history lesson and actually pull things together? But this is an important little segment about how whiskey becomes popular and becomes respectable and becomes global. And because it becomes global, and this is kind of personal theory, the ties between it and Scotland begin to fracture. That you have to sell brands in a different way. You've got to sell them shorthand. They become international, and you lose a certain degree of roots. And because you lose a certain degree of roots, it's made in Scotland, but it's not from us. And that was kind of that's what I've been feeling for a very long time. I think it's changing now, but that's how, yeah, that's kind of what this section's about, basically.
Alongside the Lafitte and Romney Conti.
Yeah, the whiskey punch. You know, anytime whiskey's been popular,
Lindsay.
Anytime whiskey's been popular, it's been drunk long or it's been drunk mixed. And then we're at Jim and Linda's amazing archive.
Arthur's
Arthur.
fleeting his fleeting appearance in the Amber Line.
If only
Immortalized there is.
You know.
Yeah. He's just a bit off camera to the left, sadly.
Yeah, and important to get Nick in here. So Dr. Nick Morgan, for those of you who don't know. So Doctor of History, set up Diageo Archive, became marketing director of Diageo Malts, and then head of Whiskey Knowledge, and is now writing a book about Johnny Walker. So he's got big picture. You know, he understands the whiskey industry. And it was a really interesting discussion, debate with Nick about this Tartman header and this, did whiskey become too cliched and did it lose touch with its roots? And also the importance of blends and why blends suddenly became up.
Yeah, and he also touches on the kind of mercantile aspect, which I think is incredibly interesting. Like really something that we could have one of the many things that we could have jumped into in a bit more depth. The amazing entrepreneurialism of these the people who became the whiskey barons and 1 or 2 generations from owning a grocery store. You know, it's kind of amazing.
Here's a classic example of respectability coming in.
He had many stories. I think, yeah, there's a fraction of the stories that he came out with. You know, it's amazing. And he really, I think, enjoyed having us to talk. Enjoyed talking about whiskey in this sort of way. You know, I enjoy that this film is got to be one of the very few films that can bring together a revolutionary anarchist from Glasgow and a member of the landed gentry talking about shared.
Same thing, but you know, that's whiskey. That's what I said. It's like, you know, democratic, and you know, what you were saying there, it's important. You know, that is how here's whiskey's respectability. You know, it was there in the cellars of the landowners,
which would have been sort of barrels
as a toddy. Yeah.
So they would have got whiskey from a distillery, but then might have had, what do you call it, an infinity barrel, or where they just keep topping it up.
I'd love to call it an infinity. It shall be known as an infinity barrel from now on. So it's like Thanos.
It's a hogpot, isn't it?
Yeah, hogpot. Yeah. But I mean, it's a really important point. This, you know, if you didn't have this respectability, then where would whiskey be? So maybe that severing of links was an inevitability, and maybe that was the price that we had to pay. You know.
It's the first. Considered by many to be the first moving image commercial.
Yeah.
by
for Jures. Yeah, thank you to
projected
Jackie
onto
for
the-
doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jackie. Yeah, projected onto the side of the Hoover building, not the Hoover building, building in Manhattan. But it was made for the Americans. It was, one of the first, if not the first.
And that's it, I mean, if you're wanting to sell Scotland and you've only got 2 seconds to sell it, it's like being a bartender. You've got 2 seconds to sell this bottle. What are you going to do? You're going to say, boom. It's as simple as that. But at the same point, you had Scotland itself shifting, and people's idea of Scotland shifting from what it had been into this kind of sentimentalized, cliched, cutty kind of place, which not that many people resisted. And I think, to be honest, I think whiskey ultimately suffers from that. Ultimately, it took a long time for it to suffer from it, but it did suffer from it.
The White Heather Club. That was the name of the TV show. I was trying to remember.
Oh,
earlier.
Jesus, the White Heather Club was like a version of the Grand Ole Opry set in Bathgate or something, Dreadful. It had nothing. It had nothing to do with Scottish folk tradition. I mean, the great musician Aidan Moffat did a beautiful film. Which just nails all that. So yeah. I watched that. That was another wee kind of touchstone for me, certainly.
Ian had some great recollections of meeting Alistair Gray for the first time. They're obviously really representative of Scotland, the two of them kind of.
Yeah, and it's that thing that, so you and I are pretty much of an age that it was folk like Alistair Gray that made us realise that we could do it, that we could talk in our own voices. That Alistair Gray wasn't a punk rocker, but Alistair Gray in some way gave birth to Scottish punk. It was that we can do it. We can do it with the tools that we have and the language that we have and the environment that we have, and we don't have to try and kowtow to the conventions which have been established from London. That's why Alistair was so important. He just went boom. He triggered something new, and the point here for me in terms of the film was that had happened in art, that had happened in literature, that had happened in film, everything happened, music, good grief, yes. And it hadn't happened in whiskey. Whiskey was still going, we are selling this idea of Scotchland rather than Scotland. And now we move, Doug, you'll be very pleased to hear, to our next dram, which is Kingsbarns Dream to Dram from Fife, from the Eastern Uke of Fife, one of the most extraordinarily beautiful and remarkable places in Scotland.
It's really quite magical. Hard to leave, despite the golf.
And they play cricket on the beach. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I do remember we were watching that cricket match and you're going, okay, we've got the shot. And I'm going, yeah, but the match isn't over.
The Great Haven. We caught Dave having a drink, and I don't think you didn't realize we were filming, did you?
Oh no, I didn't. No, it wasn't staged in any way whatsoever.
It's real cinema verite going on here, the film fans.
Well, we had this constant battle in a very friendly way about, oh, come on, it's a bit bloody cliched. Thanks, Mike. So the reason
Here's
for,
the great
the reason for going to
Stephen.
Fife was because there's such amazing things happening in Fife. You know, it's suddenly from no distilleries, it's suddenly Hochen with distilleries. And this idea of thinking, which will come on, you know, you hear a clip of Stephen and folk talking about it, that it seems to be this kind of seedbed of new and radical thinking about what whiskey can be, what music can be, and how communities can begin to work together. It's kind of the what if, you know, let's just give it a shot. So here I'm talking to my very dear friend Stephen Marshall, who went from Oddbins to Scotch Malt to Dewar's brand ambassador, created their single malt range, and then went, enough of the suits. You know, I want to wear ripped shorts, which we couldn't film because it was just wrong.
Yeah. They are available from Giorgio Armani. I think it has. They're pretty high-end Giorgio Armani shorts that he likes to wear. It's a style.
I mean, he's one of the most original and challenging thinkers in whiskey. And you listen to it and you think, oh my God, that's crazy. Then you really listen to what he's saying. And by God, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for everybody. It doesn't make sense for every company. But it makes sense for a lot of people. Yeah, he's an extraordinary guy.
And a great podcast too, that he does with James Yorkston, who's soon to appear. This is a lovely spot, East Nuke. Oof, have we? I forgot the King's Barns. Sorry.
So we, you know, at this point, we actually went to the city. So we went to see Francis Cuthbert at Daft Mill, not to look at production, but look at why a farmer decided to start making whiskey. And we've kind of gone full circle. You know, farmers made whiskey, they stopped making whiskey, farmers make whiskey again. Why is he doing it? Because making whiskey is a mad idea. You know, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of effort. He's growing crops, he's feeding beasts, he's got all of that going on. Why then make whiskey? I think, you know, not only is he just a beautiful human being and incredibly funny, but his determination and his philosophy of making whiskey is just extraordinary, and he doesn't get enough credit. I think, you know, people will be looking at Francis down the years and going, yeah, you started something different, you started something really special. And again, it's not rivaling the big distillers or whatever, but he offered a different way forward. And I think that's what the East Nuke does. It offers a different way forward, whether that's in music or art or whiskey.
How can people in the industry, not the makers, but the people kind of surrounding the industry, kind of not protect Daft Mill, but, you know, make sure that you know, all the negative aspects of the industry don't kind of overwhelm it, you know, with the flippers or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a huge problem, and I think that's something that Arthur, actually, it'd be lovely to get Arthur's opinion on that later on. But, you know, I remember after the premiere in Edinburgh, we were all in Bennett's and Francis was pouring us a few drams on the table. And, you know, he's worried that nobody's ever tried his whiskey because everybody's flipping it. You know,
which doesn't benefit anybody.
He's an amazing guy. He's making absolutely beautiful whiskey. And, you know, I think it's quite easy to think about whiskey as it's in this kind of either or way. You know, you can either do it this way or you can do it that way, but you can't do both at the same time. Francis can exist doing what he does, and that doesn't fit other distillers, and that doesn't mean that they're doing it the wrong way. It's just that is what they're doing, and they're taking as much care and consideration. But Francis, in terms of scale, in terms of approach, is a really good opening for new distillers, opening up who are smaller scale and who are wanting to talk about farm and grain to glass and that dreadful cliche, etc. But it doesn't mean the rest of it is wrong. It just means that we now have an alternative, and that's good.
Hello, Francis.
Hey, Francis, how you doing? If I'd known you were watching, it wouldn't have been so nice of you.
Yeah, last time I
Slander.
bumped into Francis at the Berry Brothers shop. Pre-COVID.
That's such an important point. It's not a working museum.
Yeah.
You know, it's not this kind of, oh, whiskey was better in the old days. No, it's the same with folk music. You know, it's not like, you know, we have to use the same old instruments. You know, things move forward, and there are elements which have maybe been forgotten from the 19th century that you can adapt. But you're not making 19th century whiskey. You know?
Yeah, but you get this amazing sense of it being made by someone who loves something and decided to do it. And then that sounds really simple, just describing it like that. But in terms of actually making a good whiskey, that's very different, because you got to hang on to liquid in casks for the moment that you think it's right, ignoring what other people tell you. I mean, the singularity of vision is
this fantastic thing is a young whiskey. Francis decided he would wait for 13 years.
Yeah.
Fine.
Because it's his whiskey, and that's what he wants to do. And if you want to do it some other way, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's kind of Stephen beginning to talk about, why here? You know, I'm just going, why is Eastern this extraordinary place? And it's, you know, creativity attracts cheap rents attract activity. You look at New York, you look at why all the artists in the Lower East Side, why has everybody moved to Detroit? Cheap rents.
I mean, I don't think
to think.
I don't think the East Snooker Fife is a place that you would expect to feature in a whiskey documentary. I mean, great James Yorkson. This is another great work by the team, Dan and Owen and everybody.
This is a very, very tight shot. This is a studio, which is an old sail loft. It's tight, and it's full of musical instruments. And it's a really interesting chat, this, and I know we're talking over it, but that James is not the easiest interviewee rather, and I like that, because he won't necessarily answer it. He'll challenge you. So there's all this kind of to and fro going. And we weren't talking about whiskey. We were talking about thinking, and we were talking about art, and we're talking about music, etc., etc. And what he was coming out with is incredibly deep, and was a way of once you begin to look at it, pulling all these threads together. You know, I was saying about how do we get out of that kind of history lesson? This is how we got out of the history lesson, because it began talking about place and how important place was in terms of his music and how it's influenced him. And just that openness of thought fitted in with what's happening in Fife, what's happening across Scotland in terms of whiskey. And it was just a beautiful way to bring things together without even talking about whiskey.
That's a keep it. The song is called "This Time Tomorrow," and it's from an early album.
It's really early on.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the album. Like I
His
said,
latest album, Route to the Harmonium, is an extraordinary piece of work. You have to get it.
oh, what's he play? The instrument is called the nickel harper, and I think it's from Sweden or it's from Scandinavia anyway. And he
Sweden, yeah.
likes to he I think he brings it with him quite regularly when he's playing live. It's a great sound and a weird looking thing, so it's quite cool. A lot of truth getting spoken. How's his whiskey coming along? Do you know? Obviously, I mean, everything's all up in the air with the pestilence. But...
Yeah, well, he's brewing now, so you've got beer. So if you're up in Fife, please go into Futtle.
And he's got his rum on.
But the whiskey is always going to be kind of down the line anyway. So, yeah. But Stephen for me was one of the. It wasn't just one of them. He was the first person within that kind of world of whiskey, and when he was embedded in whiskey, to kind of go. But there's all this amazing music, so let's put on gigs, let's put on tours, let's give money to King Creosote and Found and these guys to do a tour of Scotland. Let's put on, let's engage. Let's kind of show that whiskey is part of this.
And the Noiriki guys as well, which we were trying to.
I never on Noiriki, but sadly, it wasn't possible at that point for very, very obvious reasons. But it's very interesting. Get kind of comments coming in, going. Somebody who'd heard nickel harpa before, because I'm praising James's playing of it, because he would say he's a dreadful player of the nickel harpa. So yeah.
Nice to get a mention of Dig Dochen too. We're back at the this is the record shop on lovely street.
We're back in Glasgow. It's just one of my favourite places. Faultier and Rousseau, which is the bookshop. There's things are kind of in vague categories, but there are books piled on the floor, and there's kind of avalanches of books. I'm quite sure. Yeah.
And here's I think this is a good scene to just mention. James Weston has done an incredible job editing the film. Really saved it. Editors tend to save films. I don't know if anyone if anyone is in the film industry here, but editors are the glue. And shot by Adam Headland too, who stepped up to the plate when he needed to.
The single is actually by somebody called Whiskey David, who starts to work out it was this alcoholic Glaswegian who moved to Spain.
Yeah, he was a roadie.
Stephen has the record.
Yeah, I think he was a roadie for all sorts of bands, but they're the shorts. There aren't many wide shots to show his shorts off, but if you go on GeorgioArmani.com, if you look for Del Steven shorts, you'll find them. That's it.
you know, he's talking here about some of the, let's say, more outre ideas that he had. But thank God he thought about them, you know, because you have to challenge things. You have to challenge the conventions, because if you don't challenge conventions, things don't move forward. You know, it's not just about fancy boxes and selling to billionaires, you know. It's about engaging a new consumer, and the new consumer might not have a lot of money, but the new consumer might be interested in music or art or whatever. So find a way to talk to them. You know, and that is what whiskey's about. You know, I get kind of banging on about it, but
and he had the wherewithal to wear this was filmed again,
you know, I mean,
magic of cinema, everybody. This was filmed like 3 months apart, but he had the wherewithal to wear the same shirt he was wearing without having to be reminded. I mean, that's just it's incredible.
He only has one T-shirt.
No, he has 15 of the same T-shirts.
And so, folks, we're going to move to our final dram. And I'm going to disappear for a second because I'm making this into a highball. Okay, so Adam, the floor is yours.
This is more footage from the. I mean, I could go on for days talking about the archive at the National Library of Scotland of the Moving Image Archive. It's just incredible. And obviously there's a lot of whiskey material there. You know, old commercials, old kind of industrial films. Anybody with a very specific interest in King Creosote actually is about to come up in the film. Made a wonderful film from Scotland with love. Provide the music for it at least, but it's all material from the National Library of Scotland, the archive, and it's just brilliant, you know. So here's the great Mike Aikman down in Bramble.
Hey, Mike, who is watching, I believe.
Oh, really? He's seeing the film, but you know, he has to listen to us talking over it.
So highball.
And here's Ryan.
Yeah, really important to get sort of Mike and Jason, Ryan in here, because you know I remember, you know, when I began kind of doing kind of training stuff with whiskey. It's a long time ago, but you were kind of chasing bartenders down the street going, please try whiskey. And now they're more engaged. And there's still this gap, you know, between what companies think they should be doing and what the world is doing. And it's knowing. But whiskey was always kind of, oh no, we're over here and we do this our way because it's kind of worked for us in the past.
Yeah.
And every other spirit category was kind of going, engage bartenders, do this, have fun, etc., etc. But guys like Mike and Jason and Ryan, and I mean a host of bartenders around the world are going, we love whiskey, but let's use it in a different way. Let's innovate with it. Let's move it forward. And it's not saying this is now the only way to drink it. It's saying here's another option. You know,
I feel like
so you know, Glasgow blend with ginger ale, fever tree, orange ginger ale. Wow, amazing.
I feel like those guys are a bit like sort of to create an analogy in the food world, like St. John in London is a restaurant where so many guys come and do work as youngsters and do their apprenticeship and move on to amazing things, springboard into, I mean, guys, people who've been through St. John are in restaurants that are, you know, bigger than St. John, you know, they kind of, it's a real kind of, it's a real kind of, I don't know what the word is, like it's not a springboard, but it's like just a little kind of, a little brain that so many amazing people come through. And that's a real testament to the quality of these guys that, you know, people like Ryan and so many people come through working, doing their shifts at these bars in Edinburgh and going on and opening up amazing places. You know, it's a real.
Yeah, and Ryan started at Bramble. You know, I mean, that bar is not been given the credit it deserves for the number of amazing bartenders that he's brought into the world. You know.
Mm.
So this is our wrap party. Oh, excellent! Thanks, Darryl. What a great mix! Jesus. So we had this wrap party during the Edinburgh Festival, and the last word is Charlene and his son Ewan, who has recently.
I think it was as hot as tonight is, actually, isn't it?
It was steamy. But it was great, you know. So we had loads of whiskey cocktails, and so many folk from film came, you know, from Glasgow, from Speyside, from Fife, all over the place. And it was, it was a lovely way to kind of round things off. And you know, I sadly I had to rant a bit, so I'll talk over that bit.
It's unusual for everybody to experience that.
You know, but yeah, you know, families were there, friends were there, and it was just it was a great crack. So thank you again, Mike and the team down at Last Word for doing that.
I mean, this,
and then we had a special guest as well.
Last minute addition.
And we could sing along.
Yeah.
Glory, hallelujah! Cod liver oil and the orange juice. Peanut cider. A hell of a mixture. Orange juice.
Is the King Street Glasgow blend a good match with ginger, or are you just mortal and need some sugar?
No, not.
Are you
not
mortal?
I'm immortal. Yeah, I remember when he started singing this. It's an old Hamish Imlach song. He was kind of brought up with in Glasgow, and Charlie and I were just bellowing this out. It's it was a moment.
Very political song, isn't it?
Well, maybe.
Promise not to get into. If there's any Kickstarter backers watching, thank you so much. And like, Kickstarter is, you know, it's a great platform, and really appreciate all the backing that everybody put into it. So thank you. Lots of contributors in the film backed it too, which is the reverse of what some people want, which is.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I look at that list, I kind of go, "Oh wow, them!" And I haven't actually said thank you to them personally. No, seriously, we could not have done it without.
It wouldn't.
That
would have
campaign.
been. It would have been a tricky conversation if we didn't meet the Kickstarter goal. Yeah.
So, guys, part 2.
Thank you, Fever Tree and Glen Cairn, and all the guys in Glasgow, and I mean, I think that was a big part of the film, is the community really just came together, and you know, the whiskey community and Ian Rankin and Alistair Roberts, and you know, all the non-whiskey folk came together and really kind of really got what we were trying to do, and we're really happy to. The singer is King Creosote, by the way. advise going to check out the documentary he did. I think he made it he was commissioned at the time of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. The film's called From Scotland with Love, and it's built entirely from archived material from the Moving Image Archive at the National Library. And they're incredible. It's in Glasgow.
Give him a heart, man. Oh. 5-weekly soap opera, thank you. The orange juice.
Great song. Yeah. I subsequently found out that Christy Moore was, or Hamish Imlick was, Christy Moore's mentor, which is kind of brings us back to Ireland.
It's quite a thing. It's quite a thing.
Yeah.
Hi guys.
Arthur,
Hi.
You're still with us.
Yeah. See, I'm drunk now, but
the director's half cut, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm more half cut. I didn't have anything to do. It seemed to work, guys. I think that worked.
Well,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, if you thought it worked, it worked. Yeah,
I think it worked. I had a great time. Thank you very much, guys, for talking through
not at all.
that brilliant film. And I guess we can hang around and chat a little bit longer and see if specific questions come in about the film. Obviously, I've been putting a little bit of the banter up there, a bit of the beard slagging, plenty of beard slagging.
No, I think it was beard praise, to be perfectly honest.
Beard praise. That's right.
There's a lot of it, though. The beard, not the praise. Sorry.
Huge. I don't know where my chin is.
But it was great. It was great to see it again. And God, the pubs, it made you so nostalgic, didn't it? Jeez, because all the coverage of pubs at the moment is depressed-looking landlords, talking about how they're hoping to get back. They're not actually just showing people having pints and having a drink in a pub as it used to be.
I think that was like my motivation for making the film, because I wasn't coming from an already kind of geeky whiskey kind of angle. It was that kind of like this incredible thing that you drink and you listen to music and you sit in a pub and you share stories and you kind of have this incredible experience. Pubs are. I mean, I think we spoke about it quite a lot. It's like with Dave while we were making the film, is actually like honing in on pubs as a kind of center of community. As a place to meet and a place to listen to music and tell stories and stuff. It's incredible. Am I getting a bit misty-eyed now?
I don't know what that means, Dave, but it's obviously an in.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, only for you, my friend. Only for you. Late at night.
In the King's Branch bit, and it was great to see Francis again. You actually lingered for a long time on an actual cask that we bottled.
Really?
Which was amazing. Yeah. So we
entirely intentional.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, had we bottled the cask yet? But no, obviously, because it was in the film. But yeah, it was amazing. There was a long shot on cask 44, which was the one we spent a whole day there. And Francis opened any cask we wanted, which was a lot. And the one we settled on was cask 44, I think, from memory. And you had a big closing shot on that. So that was lovely to see.
There we go.
That's James.
That was a great series they did. The Independent Merchants series, they were great casks. Yeah, really, really interesting.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to bring the night down by talking about flippers, but that's kind of a bit mental, as you say. And it's just so different to the story and why we love Darth Mill and why we love Francis, and then suddenly it's got a bit ugly.
Exactly.
But anyway, sorry, I said I wouldn't bring the night down, then I did. Anyway.
Well, I didn't get to mention that amazing the story Francis tells about the coachload of whiskey tourists that sort of make their way down his driveway up to his farm. It's sort of 8 in the morning or whatever it might be. just some enterprising whiskey tour company has put his distillery on their journey, and obviously not being aware that there's not exactly a visitor center going on there. It's a working farm that happens to have a distillery in one of their sheds that they're not working in. So.
It's hardly a shit.
Well, yeah.
I'm only saying that because Francis is watching.
Well, I do it a disservice, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, no one seems to want to ask any questions. There's lots of
good.
There's lots of praise. There's lots of praise. Annabelle's still talking about having a sing along. I think
there was a sing along. Dave did the chimed into cod liver oil and orange juice.
Yeah, I'm in desperate need of a boiled egg. You know?
Yes, way to boil an egg. Mungo agrees that we need people, pub, and music. What else?
Thank you, Mungo.
Emma's still going on about how much she loves Francis. She's such a fangirl. But I think that's lovely because Emma is a blender for Diageo, the biggest Scotch whiskey company in the world, and yet she goes starry-eyed when the name of Francis Cuthbert is brought up, which is absolutely lovely, I think. And she's
Emma, thanks for watching, Emma. Yeah. She's amazing. I think, and that's the point, because I often get that kind of question about, small companies doing better than the big companies and stuff. And if you look at the innovations which are underway in the big companies, and you look at a lot of the brands that have come out with that kind of experimental range that Johnny Walker did, that Emma was very much part of, they're doing groundbreaking stuff. The big guys are doing groundbreaking stuff. It's not this kind of us and them kind of thing. It's not this simplistic, as I was saying earlier on, sort of yes or no, or them and us. There's some really fascinating stuff happening in Scotch whisky. And the biggest companies are part of it.
Georgie Crawford is keeping us right. There was a question early on, but it was too early to interrupt. But the origin of the hot toddy, do you know after that? Do you know that year after Glastonbury? Actually, Georgie, I found a picture of us at our secret whiskey bar at Glastonbury that was sent through to me this week. So watch out. I'm not going to share screen, but I will send it to you. Oh my God. Anyway, so the origin of the hot toddy.
I'm scared to even think about what that might mean.
No, what is the origin of the hot toddy? The drink, whiskey, hot, lemon, ginger. What is the origin of the hot toddy, Dave?
What is the origin of it? I haven't a clue.
Okay, good. Move on. I've got another question. Sequel? Question mark.
Oh,
I like Robin's economy with words. Yeah.
Obviously, COVID has thrown up a spanner in most enterprises. We hope to. We've got an idea for a series, which would take the same kind of approach that we've taken here and sort of applied it to other cultures that have a spirit, a distilled liquid that's really kind of interwoven with it, which obviously has all sorts of possibilities. We were quite close at one point, and COVID happened, and we're trying to, I don't need to mention the last 6 months yet again, but we're hoping, doing our best.
It was kind of plans were somewhat stymied by all of that. So we'll see. But there's some enthusiasm for it. Different format. Probably not this, but maybe more condensed. But
it's just incredible. I mean, I in a previous work that I was doing before this film, I was spending a lot of time in Mexico, and just imagine the possibilities of taking the same kind of approach and applying it to agave spirits, or applying it to rum, or applying it to bourbon, or applying it to brandy, or whatever, gin, or I think it's a great way of investigating or looking at people and cultures around the world, and how the spirit that they make has influenced and been influenced by the sort of other creative kind of endeavors around them.
What about an Amber Light Whiskey Festival after lockdown? Get Stephen Marshall on that.
Yeah. I would love to do a whiskey festival at Futtle. Just to.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
And actually, from Richard,
and of course, Arthur, I have to say that once again, thank you for pairing with us too. I thought I had the bottle handy to do the bottling of that amazing Ben Nevis. There is life. There's kind of life in the Amber Light thing. Watch the space. There might be something else coming.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I can forge as many documents from dead artists as you want, if you like. If you're short on content, that's no problem. But there's a very actually good. Don't apologise it for being functional, Richard. It's a good point. I do want to mention
it's a good point.
So, how much longer are we able to watch the film for? Some people might have been watching the film for the first time tonight, and it is no disrespect, guys, quite an odd way to watch that film for the first time. Two guys talking over a talkie film. So, Adam, you said the film was going to be up using that link and that passcode for another.
Another. I was planning on 48 hours, but if you've bought the pack and you've contributed to the Drinks Trust, then let me know let Arthur know or myself on social media, and we'll send it to you again.
So 48 hours from today, so Friday, Saturday, basically.
Yeah. We'll leave it up at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, that's good. The rain's coming. The rain is coming. So, okay. I'm just
yellow storm warnings down here in southeast England. So.
Linda asked, "What's your favourite whiskey, guys? You'll go to everyday drinkable bottle."
Oh, Jesus. At the moment, it's Great King Street Glasgow blend.
Dave, are you finishing your answer there?
Blends.
It's all falling apart, I think, is it? Have we lost Dave?
It's all falling apart.
Yeah, he'll come back. He'll come back.
There you go.
I'm here. Everyday drum. To be honest, I'm in this idiotically privileged position that I've got. That I don't even want to show you my desk at the moment. So I've got lots of daily drams. Has to be said, but I would normally drink them like this. To be honest, probably higher up. Yeah.
I like Compass Box very much. I like the hedonism of a drink quite a lot. I drink a lot of bourbon as well. Actually, interestingly, the bottling that the guys at Bramble did of Buffalo Trace, I like very, very much. I've finished it, and I don't think they have any left. But from what I can tell, that's a fairly common feeling amongst whiskey drinkers, that it's fairly limited and they finish it and they can't have any more. But that was a bottle I liked very much. Two bottles.
They've also got an amazing North British, which I think you've still got some of, Arthur.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, the young one in almost like a Scottish bourbon.
Like 4-year-old or something, virgin oak cask. It is an utter belter. Green whiskey. Good grief. I think that's the other thing. It's kind of. I love people asking me that question because you never ever give them a direct answer. it's not just single malt. You know, it's blends, it's single grain. It is the amazing whiskies that are coming out of England at the moment. Amazing new bourbons, amazing new American single malts, and good grief, you know, whiskey is just going through a remarkable period that it has never gone through before. There's never been so many great whiskies available. You know, enjoy.
Well, I think that we're getting the hook from Paul here. Good night, all. He's just saying,
Cheers, Paul.
Go to bed, guys. but yeah, I think. That is a zinger coming in from Georgie. That is a zinger.
Oh, Hi. Yes, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Mungo Park's been on Wikipedia. No, you might be an expert. I'm sorry, Mungo, if that's true.
No, he's not an expert. Don't worry.
But
thanks, Mungo.
Should we call it a night, lads?
Yeah. I need to boil an egg. So.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for those who bought the dram packs getting involved, and I hope those that didn't buy the dram packs also enjoyed it very much. I think this is recorded as well, so what we're going to do is make this available via the Vimeo page that the film is available on. So if you want to listen along to a commentary, like the DVD commentaries of old, it'll be there. And I think we've been quite innovative with the available technology. And so thank you, Arthur, for putting it together. And,
no problem at all. I think actually it's going to stay up on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
And I think that the dram packs will still be available for sale. So if you want to recommend it to a friend.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. They're still available.
You can still do it. Yeah. Our other tastings people have been doing after the event.
Okay, wicked. Yeah.
And so
that makes perfect sense.
Afterwards. So cool. Well, thanks, guys. I'm gonna
thank you,
wave
Arthur.
you guys off.
Thank you, Arthur. Everybody. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Adam, you're an otter.
I was against the term until I made this, and now I'm totally at ease with the auteur theory now. Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody. Have a good night.
Cheers, guys. So thanks very much for watching. I'm just going to sign off. We've been doing these tastings fairly regularly. One of the things we've heard quite regularly, actually, is from normal people, not uber whiskey geeks, but normal people who say, well, can you just teach us the basics? So we're going to do a tasting. There's a pack online on rawmarwhiskies.com at the moment where I've chosen 5 really good drams, and we're going to bring people in and out, and it's going to be a quick and dirty kind of shortcut to understanding whiskey using video, image, and a lot of chat from myself and more interesting people. So join us for that, or if you've got someone who, a friend who who is interested in whiskey, then please recommend it, because it should be fun. Right, thanks very much, guys. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll say good night now. Cheerio.